So it's good to have you both. Dave Smith, first of all, there is a sort of growing sense that Charlie Kirk was wrestling with the war in Gaza. He'd gone from a position of being a bit like I did, I think, of being very pro-Israel's right to defend itself, to getting increasingly concerned about the scale of what has been happening in the last few months in Gaza. What is your sense about that, and how significant is it?
Well, I mean, I think it's significant. I think it's really a fascinating story that maybe it would have been appropriate to wait a few more weeks before we really started getting into, but everyone dove into it, including the Prime Minister of Israel, right away. And I'll tell you what I know for sure, what I think most people know, is that, look, Charlie Kirk was in a different position than, say, just a commentator like Ben Shapiro or like me or you, Pierce, or he was organizing a youth movement to, support Republican candidates. And the youth are really abandoning support for Israel. And so he had a very difficult job as like the movement guy who's trying to keep a big tent going. And so he was attempting to do that. And you could see this at his last big event where I debated there, where he had speakers like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, who said some things, and I'm sure myself too, who said some things that really upset some of his backers and some of the more hardcore Zionists out there. And he was quite open in his interview with Megyn Kelly about talking about the dynamic that you've experienced. I had a post on Twitter that or X that went viral about you, which I believe you reposted.
I did.
But I was just using you, like you were the latest example in this trend, which a lot of people have experienced, where people who are generally pro-Israel, in many cases have been pro-Israel their entire lives, have an issue with something that Israel does. They go a little bit too far for them, and they start criticizing them for that, and they're immediately met with accusations of being an anti-Semite and essentially the new Adolf Hitler. And I do think that that's very jarring and often has the effect of just pushing people further away from Israel. Now, I don't think that was happening in Charlie Kirk's case, but I do think he was certainly grappling with how do you keep this movement together when the young people who you're trying to galvanize and organize are abandoning Israel at an incredibly rapid rate.
Officer Tatum, what's your response to that?
Yeah, but my response is very similar. I knew Charlie very well, and I know a lot of people that know Charlie. And I think that Charlie was wrestling with this conflict. I don't think that in any way he was changing his perspective on Israel, because Charlie's love for Israel goes beyond who's running Israel, goes beyond Benjamin Netanyahu. It goes deeper. It goes to a spiritual level. And Charlie was unwavering on that. But I do think, and I know this for a fact, that he was getting a lot of pressure because the youth was abandoning Israel to a certain degree, and it bothered him because he wanted Israel to do better with their PR to try to capture these young minds so they don't fall or be against Israel, because Charlie had a deep love and respect for Israel. So he was feeling the pressure, and a lot of people can't handle that pressure. And I think that Charlie was in a unique position. Unlike me, I don't care what people say to me. I don't really care. But when it comes to Charlie, he does care about what the young people are saying, because that is the establishment of all that he worked for so many years. So I don't blame him for it, but I do know that it was the pressure that he was feeling. Megyn Kelly was feeling the pressure. And some people just, when that pressure is on, they try to move to a central point so they don't have to deal with it.
Dave Smith, there was Tucker Carlson made a pretty powerful speech, actually. I thought in many ways, certainly captivated the audience yesterday at the memorial for Charlie Kirk, but included what he described as his favorite story. Let's take a listen.
Ultimately, he was a Christian evangelist. And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking.
And it's always, don't believe your ears, don't believe what they were saying, believe what I think they meant. That's what the argument is, always the same shit. Yeah, I like him more now.
We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do? about this guy telling the truth about us. We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I can just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
Dave Smith, what did you make of that?
Knowing what we know now, how fucking crazy was that?
I don't know. I mean, I see people freaking out about this on social media today, but I think what I took from the message was that, yeah, he's telling the foundational story of Christianity and making the point that obviously Charlie Kirk was, when you're assassinating someone for the crime of trying to have open dialogue and discussion, the idea is you're trying to silence that guy. You're against this discussion taking place. And I think the point Tucker was making was that, if killing someone silenced their ideas, then the last several thousand years of Western civilization would look quite differently. And that the idea being that Charlie Kirk's his ideas are now going to have, which is I think just factually true, a larger platform and resonate with more people than they even could have in his life.
As indeed did Jesus Christ's views after his crucifixion. Officer Tatum, I mean, a lot of people have tried to spin this as Tucker Carlson being anti-Semitic, very predictable, because that's the stick used to beat anyone that does anything that may possibly be construed that way. What did you make of that part of his speech?
Well, I want to address the anti-Semitic thing. I think that people, and this is my advice to people who are Zionists or people who are Jews, you got to stop with the pushing the anti-Semitic thing every time somebody says something you don't like. You have to stop. I was just talking to a friend yesterday that said he just got bombarded with people calling him an anti-Semite because he shared a post of somebody who, may have had a difference of opinion. So that needs to stop, or you're going to lose all credibility and respect from good people that love you. Now, Tucker Carlson, when I first watched it, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't think none of it. I don't really like Tucker very much, but and I do think that he has a lot of negative things to say unjustifiably about Israel, but he's entitled to his own opinion. But I can see why some people are thinking that he may have been subliminally saying things that were connecting Israel to this whole thing. Now, I don't go down the bandwagon because I can't unequivocally prove that, but I did find it.
That's their guilty conscience. That's what that is. Because you could just as easily apply that to the story that the FBI is trying to put out there. That a little furry did all this and jumped off the roof, and they didn't even want him talking about that kind of shit. So why would it be subliminal? You could apply it to either one. So just guilty conscience.
It's interesting that he had made mention as if Charlie was really an attack or attacking the government, as if Charlie's death was directly associated with government officials, when in fact, it was really these narcissistic lunatics that are over-medicated that hate Charlie because he's countering the arguments that we see that's pervasive on campus. The government is not taking extreme positions as the kids on campus are taking. They're brainwashed. I've been on campus. I've been to probably 40 universities. The kids on campus don't live in reality. They live in an alternate reality. They don't live like we do. We pay taxes, we have to go to work, we have to be nuanced about arguments and things that we get involved in. They are completely radicalized. So
like everyone who watches Fox News and CNN isn't also brainwashed, right? If you can watch the war in Gaza and look at that and say, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, you're brainwashed. And if you looked at Biden and said, hey, yeah, he looks like he's on the ball, yeah, you're brainwashed. It's same thing.
I think that people could take it a certain way, but let me tell you this. It seems as if Charlie was very good friends with Tucker Carlson. And it seems to me that Tucker Carlson can say whatever he want to say, and that may be the way he liked to grieve, or that's the way that he wanted to present himself at a ceremony. And I think people should leave it alone unless you have unequivocal evidence that he was somehow trying to do that, because you cheapen the love and respect and dedication that all of the people who spoke at the ceremony had for Charlie Kirk's life. People got to stop trying to go too deep on both sides. Let the man be loved and appreciated by everybody who was on stage, and quit trying to conjure up controversy and conspiracies.
Pierce, could I just add to that? Because I do.
Notice how he said that too. All this is just based off of this conjecture in his head that he was talking about Israel and not talking about the furry they were trying to claim shot him. So he's like downgrading Tucker over something that's just in his head. This could just as easily he could just as easily be talking about the furry
think there's something kind of interesting, like, because like, having a black conservative and a Jewish guy who's like a critic of Israel, there's always like some parallels that I see between those two positions. And I think maybe we could, like, across the board on all of these things, people got to just stop making accusations of bigotry based off of what you're guessing the other person was dog whistling.
Exactly.
Like, you're saying that there was a secret message hidden somewhere in what the other person said. Listen, say what you will about Tucker Carlson. I know Brandon said he's not a big fan. I love the guy. Of all the things you could criticize him for, he'll tell you how he feels. I promise you. He'll tell you how he feels. If he has a controversial view, he'll say it. He's not hiding some view embedded in his story here. And people got to get over this, man. There's just, like, if we couldn't take one lesson away from the last 15 years, that making these accusations of bigotry to shut down conversations and making these accusations where there's no tangible evidence that they exist, they do not solve the problem of real bigotry. They make the problem much worse. And everybody should back off of that. Now, I do want to ask, though, I got to say, because as you mentioned there, you said that, your friend was being called anti-Semitic for sharing a clip of what someone else thought. And listen, man, we don't know each other, but literally the only interaction we've ever had is you called me, I think, a devil and one of the worst people in America the other day, also for sharing a clip of somebody else.
No.
Devil,
I'm glad you brought it up. Because there's a reason why I said that. It's not that I somehow mentioned something about you just in passing. You shared a post of one of the most disingenuous, evil individuals that I've ever seen online. Nick Fuentes shamed Charlie. Ever since 2017, he would come out, harass, accost Charlie at events. He would harass his wife. Him and the gropers would harass my wife because she's white. And this guy said Charlie is a fake Christian and he's disgusting and he should never be able to be on campus without being shouted down. And then he comes out and makes a fake apology. And I felt like you supported that. And then also my art with you, I had never met you before. I disagree with you on Israel, but I respect that you come with your opinions. But when you were on stage at SAS and you chastised those young people and said they can never claim to be pro-life ever again because they support a genocide, I thought that was the most disgusting thing that any adult man could say to young kids who was just seeking the truth and openly listening to a debate between you and another individual. So the only reason I said that is based on those principles alone. I don't know you personally, but I thought that was disgusting. And anybody who support that Nick Fuentes guy who shamed my friend who's now dead, it bothers me to no end.
Dave?
Okay, well, look, I mean...
All right, let me address the Nick Fuentes issue here. Nick Fuentes was talking to his alive rival who was telling everybody to come debate him. He'll debate anybody, but every time Nick went, they kicked him out and wouldn't let him debate. So he was talking about a rival who was alive. So it's really low-class scumbag shit to bring up things he said when he was alive to try and say shit about him now. He did the right thing. He said that he didn't apologize, but he did say that they had issues and that this was a horrible thing and he didn't want to see that happen. He tried to mend fences even though the guy's dead, just, trying to be graceful, I guess. And this scumbag is talking about shit that happened whenever they were alive and they were enemies of each other who both said pretty evil things about each other. Charlie called him a rodent or some shit like that, a rat or some shit. He called him a bunch of things. Like, they both did, but that's what they do when they were alive. So to bring that up now that he's dead, that's just trashy.
Again, I said I give him all the credit in the world for this. And what was this? This was after Charlie Kirk was killed, him saying that he was a good man, that he's praying for his soul, and urging his supporters not to be violent in response to this. And I got to say, I thought, as I think many of us did, immediately after Charlie was killed, and immediately after your first reaction of feeling so horrible on a personal level for his family, you realize this is a very dangerous situation. And I got to say, for Nick Fuentes, being who he is, to have him telling his audience, hey, hey, if you respond at all with violence to this, I completely disown you. We need to be Christians about this. We need to be peaceful. We should be praying for him and his family. I give him credit for that. Whatever other beef you got with him, that's between you two. I didn't say I agree with the guy on everything he's ever said. Well, hold on. Let me just respond. I didn't endorse everything the guy's ever said. I said I give him all the credit in the world for this, and then shared the clip of this.